That's and a leather jacket as well. You see why I'm calling him Mombasa, Texas. And you know, people have been buying stones since Sunday, right, for demonstrations. And they were differently, of course, labeled. There are stones with propeller. There are stones which are missile guided as well. On a lighter note, so we are joined by Professor Peter Kagwanjo, the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. Also, Hamid Ashi is with us as well to give us his input. And you can see Noah Midamba is just walking behind me. Unbeknownst that we're on air as well. And he just walks on set like that. That's the beauty of live TV. He's joining us. Noah Midamba is, of course, a foreign policy and defense analyst, and also senior partner with Glossep, of course, Concept. We are glad to have a show this morning. We look forward also to be discussing this intensively and looking at the dailies as well. Let me just see from Mombasa, Texas, what is happening from Mombasa, Texas as well.
I don't think it's much happening there.
There's nothing.
We didn't go for demonstrations, that I can say, because I didn't see them in the streets of Mombasa. I was there, but it was amusing to find that. What looked like a dark crowd has a silver lining, that there was a thriving business in stones. It was all over social media. And I went deep and looked at it, and I was told there were those missile-guided stones, party bomb.
Yeah, with projectiles.
With the projectiles.
50 bob.
Yeah, with projectiles, that 50 bob. Then the ordinary stone was the one who was going for 10 bob.
You don't even know how to throw.
No, it was...
I'll teach you.
No, that's why I'm keeping my distance, because I don't know what kind of stone you have.
From Noah Midamba's side, you know, stone throwing is a rite of passage.
Mine is projected properly.
So you've got to really hone your skills.
It was amusing. You know, I think that was the most hilarious part. And Kenya will never, you know, cease to be a nation of humor. We are really a nation of humor, because even at that dark moment, you still find somebody, you know, in the streets selling stones, and some had bigger stock than others. Some had a bigger pile.
It's called they call it carpe diem, seizing the moment.
Seizing the moment.
So you've got to see an opportunity as well and seize it. Hamid Ashi, you were smarting from the tear gas as well. Where were you?
Well, you know, the ball. There's my private life and my public life. This is my public life. But I can tell you, I was somewhere in town and I could sniff the chili. And after a while, I said, the younger generation, I've done my part. Horses have hit me. I've been put inside many police stations. So I went to Yaya and I had a cup of coffee and watched the young people do their civic duty. But the projectile story, just as much as Professor Kagwanjo, who's wearing the Kapenguria 6 jacket.
Hey, I didn't see that.
Kapenguria 6.
You know,
This is the Kapenguria 6.
Guys on the lake, when they go out to war, they put on that English hat with the cross check. These are the Luos from Nyanza. And the people from the mountain, they wear the Kenyatta jacket.
Kapenguria 6. I like the Kapenguria 6.
So things are not well today. The bar better be a good moderator.
I wonder why he's elected to come with the Kapenguria 6. Iko Mambo.
Lastly, I want to wish the Muslim community in this country Ramadan Kareem. Tomorrow is our fast, inshallah. And we welcome it. It's a time for remembering your Creator, remembering the poor, remembering things like social justice, remembering uneven societies. And this is, it's important that all the faiths in this country to try and help this country find its direction. And I want to call upon the clergy of all the faiths in this country not to sit at home and see our politicians fighting and not intervene in what's going on. When people fight, they need friendly fire from the rest of the people to bring them together. Of course, our economy, Dabal, is if this continues, if Mr. Odinga's mass action continues for the next quarter, 90 days, or even 60 days, the economy of Kenya, as we know it, will collapse. And we cannot let that happen. We are already in a very fragile situation. This is why I said that the moral compass has been lost both by the government and by the opposition. The government has lost its moral compass because it was chest thumping. It was in a rush to celebrate its victory. It was not sensitive to the opposition after 30 years of campaigning and having the best chance to come into power lost. And in victory, the best thing is always to be magnanimous. And I said this to our president, and I said, reach out to the two leaders and bury the hatchet, bury the wheelbarrow, bury the stone, and bury the Kapenguria 6 jacket. And, the ball, in that case, and as leaders in our own right, as public leaders in our own right, we call on, again, for the clergy in this country to try and bring our politicians together so that this country does not go through another day of mass action. And it does not go through another day of unilateralism by the government. And that is my wish for this country.
All right, let's hear from Naomi Damba. Good morning, good to see you.
Good morning, Dubal.
Yes, you can tell us also where you were on Monday.
Yes, I was with my daughter, Adriana Kinyi, Midamba, that I brought to the studio this morning. Dubal, first of all, of course, I want to wish our brothers and sisters, Muslim brothers and sisters, a holy time, and to reflect on the meaning of religion and how we can inject religion in our society for the good of all. Dubal, there are things happening behind the scene, and I'm watching very closely. There are 4 countries, as you know: Tunisia in the north, South Africa in the south, Nigeria in the west, and Kenya in the east. There are things happening. But what I need for our people to understand is the aspiration of young people. This team of Hustler, which I think was inspired by our friend David D., the economist, can be very dangerous. Because when you promise young people something, they don't want it tomorrow, they want it now. And they're watching very close the proceedings and expressions and commitment by the government to change their life. And Barack Obama said 3 things that were very paramount when he was first elected president. He said, the future of America, of our people, is opportunity and security for our family. And the second thing he said, rising standard of living is our expectation. And lastly, sustainable, peaceful planet for our future generation. Kenya is one of the most blessed countries in the continent of Africa. We are the 4th largest economy in the Africa south of Sahara. We are number 6, but we can slip very quickly and can enter a no-one zone. So it is incumbent for people who are shouting and talking to refrain and refocus their tools on what Kenya expects.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, Naomi Damba. We shall be hearing more from you as well. But we want to see what is fresh off the press this morning before we step out of the house. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard bold paper. Battle for the hustler's soul is what is headlining the front page of the Standard this morning. Battle for the hustler's soul. We have Naomi Damba talking about the hustler narrative. There is a Ruto's take here. It says that Azimio leaders are insincere They're insincere and want to get into government through the back door. He's willing to hold talks with anyone who has the interest of the nation at heart. Also, he has a plan that will lower the cost of living, but it takes time to implement. And that is a bottom-up plan. President William Ruto's rallying call during the campaigns was, let's make life better for the low-income earner. With the shoe on the other foot, opposition leader is consolidating support of the wananchi to protest the high cost of living. And this is well laid out for you on page 6, 7, 8, and 9 of the Standard this morning. And we have Raila's axe, cost of living. Azimio is pushing for lowering of the cost of food, fuel, and electricity. Electoral justice, they're fighting the reconstitution of IBC, saying the president is acting unilaterally. And also we have inclusive government. They say the president is promoting tribalism through appointments. Those are the texts there. And you can see the wheelbarrow and sufuria have become the symbols of a push to address the plight of wananchi with government and opposition reading from different scripts. That is a story to you. As I've said, you can follow it on page 6, 7, and 8 of the Standard this morning. Little to smile about on World Water Day. Little to smile about on World Water Day. Rivers are drying up and few water sources are getting polluted. Urgent steps are needed to protect riparian lands. And this is covered on page 14 and 15, plus also page 10, pages of the World Water Day. Even as we observe the World Water Day, we remember as well that we need to conserve the little that we have. We have a warning from the governor of Nairobi that we'll be having water rationing if at all rains will be suppressed. And so we pray that we get lots of rains so that at least our dams may be full and we may get constant supply of water. Cabinet allows state farms sell without MPs. This has a cabinet approval there. Now MPs will have no say as far as the sales or the privatization, or not really the sale, but privatization of the parastatals are concerned. This is covered on page 4 of the Standard. Uhuru team loaded telecom debt on citizens. That is on page 10. And Kika faces jail time over CEC jobs. This is on county pages. You can follow that on page 21 of the Standard today. Drought killed 43,000 in Somalia. That is just a spectre of what we're talking about, the known figures there. And that is according to the UN report that has just been released. You can follow that on page 37 of the Standard. Also remember, today is Wednesday, I should say. And every Wednesday we have enterprise coming your way. Get all the wise as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. Why funding eludes Kenyans startups, right? Find out why that cash crunch really, or you seeking for that angel, of course, investor, is not really forthcoming for you. What do you need to do? Follow that inside the Standard today. The Daily Nation up next. Raila steps up onslaught against Ruto. And we have also the flag reading politics. President's allies ask authorities to arrest Odinga. Related stories are also inside. Arrest Raila, president's ally tell police. This is on page 5. A mother's heartbreak as son is shot dead by police. This is on page 6. Note again, of course, we remember baby Pendo. It was just also protests that were ongoing, and that stray bullet killed the baby. Businesses count losses after day of protest. You can follow that story on page 7. Upping the ante. Opposition leader Raila Odinga yesterday announced mass action twice a week, even as he made a fresh demand for the reinstatement of 4 independent electoral and boundaries commission bosses who were forced out, and accused police of brutality during Monday's protest. You have the story on page 4. I'm the victim here. Maxine tells court Assad was abusive. This also is fleshed out for you on page 3 of the Daily Nation. We have Ruto, Gachagua, Mudavadi get 802 million shillings for cars. 3 officers got lion's share of 2.06 billion shillings allocation for purchase of new vehicles. The budget for cars has shot up 8 times with this new administration, and you can follow the story on page 2. And we're not even talking about also the CSs who are yet to be sworn in. That story is well covered for you on page 2. Devolution, counties pending bills rise to 158 billion shillings. Also, you can look at the counties that are that are loved by teachers. This is all about transfers of teachers. Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kajiado are some of the most preferred counties by teachers seeking transfers following their operationalization of the delocalization policy by the TSC. Officials' data now shows this. Let's see what the Star is holding for us inside. Secret push for Raila Ruto dialogue is what is hogging the front page of the Star. And clerics, diplomats, cop working behind the scenes. Headliners get in the way, and Odinga scales up his mass protest to twice a week, heightening anxiety across the country. We can see an insert here of Raila looking at the Star. And it says a Raila Star boycott call is irresponsible. This is what CEO of Radio Africa is saying. This is Patrick Kwarko. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has asked Azimio supporters to boycott Safaricom, Kenya Commercial Bank, and Radio Africa, especially the Star newspaper. The call is unfortunate, unjustified, and irresponsible, especially because Raila knows only too well the importance of a free and independent press in promoting good governance and transparency in the management of public affairs, which he is fighting for. You can read the rest of the details there. Editorial comment from the Star. Also, Khan was abusive, took all my money from sponsorship, Wahome tells court. That is what you can follow on the murder charge there on page 9 of the Star this morning. Cry for justice after son shot dead during protest. This is what mom is calling. She's asking why William Mayenga's father can be seen here at Coptic Mission Morgue. Mayenga's mother, Evelyn Miruka, and also William Mayenga himself, the Maseno University third-year student who was shot dead by police during a demonstration on Monday. This is the Star. The People Daily is up next. MPs give 385 billion shillings as county's share revenue allocation. Although devolved units owe 156 billion shillings in pending bills, National Assembly has offered them 40 billion shillings less than what they had asked for, leaving their fate in the hands of senators who will make or break the deal. This story continues on page 4 of the People Daily. Ruto cabinet clears way for sale of parastatals. Highest decision-making body approves 23.9 billion shillings to fight food crisis and improve security, and also set stage for sale of state-owned enterprises without seeking approval of government. That story, you have it on page 3 of the People Daily this morning. British billionaire speaks on sale of Man U United. Also, when is it right for widowers to remarry? That is a probing question there. And we have on top here the Azimio strategy. Now that we have another day tucked in during the week, that is on Thursday, Monday, Thursday demonstrations aimed at piling pressure on IBC to open election results servers for audit. Also, we have product boycotts. Raila has told supporters to avoid Safaricom, KCB Bank, as well as the Star newspaper. Legal challenges here as well. Officers who were involved in incidents with protesters will be sued personally at home and abroad. That is the People Daily. Pressure. Ruto Raila wazungumze. That is a splash here. Gavana, viongozi wa kidini wahimiza vigogo hao kuongea huku Odinga akitangaza maandamano mapya. That is a story that you want to follow inside the Taifa Leo this morning. Also fujo walinaso na polisi. It gives you all details there of the demonstrations on Monday, how it went down. And we have also the Business Daily. Let's buckle down to talk about business a bit, where Kenya Power blackouts hit 10 hours on aging lines. November blackouts longest in 2 years. Farm hit, I should say, with 5th nationwide blackout in March. Also, Raila product boycott calls amplify political risk for farms. And 7th Kenyan tech startup goes under on lack of funding. And that story continues on page 6 of the Business Daily. Of course, you can actually interlink that with the entrepreneur who are talking about the entrepreneur or entrepreneur magazine inside the Standard that is talking about how startups also, their funding is elusive. Pension assets post muted growth amid weak markets, and Ruto backs push to sell parastatals without MP's approval. That is on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. Editorial cartoons are here, and this is where I want to rope in our panelists and just discuss this as well. If we may just look at the demonstrations on Monday, and now we'll be having Thursday beginning next week that is tucked in on that particular week. So we'll have 2 demonstrations in a week. This is what Gado has drawn. The dark days are back, literally and figuratively. Dark days, according maybe to Gado, is it back to black because of Kenya Power blackouts, Hashi? Or also it is just because of the demonstrations? So we can see a man and a wife holding court there watching the demonstrations. The dark days are here and they're back, I should say.
Well, you know, the Kenya government is going to privatize a lot of parastatals. And I think that one of the parastatals that needs to be privatized is this KPLC, because we just can't win with them. The whole country, everybody has a generator. Every apartment building has a generator, because we don't have reliable, safe, cheap electricity. I'm always here telling this country, because that is the basis of our economy, clean, cheap power. Either get it from the sun, or get it from the Inga Dam, or get it from the Renaissance Dam, or get it here where my cousins in the northeastern live. There's a project where they've put this glass panes for solar energy. So it is Nairobi, which is one of the major cities in Africa. Every afternoon does not have electricity. Every afternoon it does not have electricity. It is a scandal that this has been going on forever. And can you imagine KTN in the middle of an interview that's being watched by millions and millions of people in this continent and in the region, suddenly goes off? It's not acceptable. In any other decent country, that Minister for Energy would be out of office the next morning. So if there's something that needs to be privatized, it is the KPLC. And I hope that it is, because it's causing industry a lot of hurt. It's causing small business a lot of hurt. It's causing homes a lot of hurt. It's causing... you may not even need to charge your phone on an important call and there's no electricity developed. So I think that we ought to get this right. We have to get the power issue right. And that's why I believe, don't need the Ministry of Energy in this country. We need a Ministry of Power in all its forms. Because energy, means that you can get away with the KPLC. Because you could say that, the dams, the water did not rise, or the water was too low, and therefore the dams didn't turn, the turbines did, something like this. But if you have a Ministry of Power, it just tells you that that man or that woman responsible for that cabinet doc is responsible for us turning off on the light. And in the 21st century, in 2023, is it very difficult to ask for people to have electricity? Is it?
That's the question. All right, and I want us also to, if we just take it in full there, so that we can have Kagwanja also looking at this editorial cartoon there by Victor today in the Daily Nation. We have police on one side of the ring, and also we do have on the other end as well, Right Honorable Raila Odinga with his political operatives, right? We have Juliet holding the dove there. I don't know what you can decipher from this, Peter Kagwanja. It's a slugfest. If anything was to go by on Monday.
Yeah. I think one thing we must appreciate is that Raila Odinga is a genius in terms of organizing his politics. I mean, I started with the series because I really wanted to monitor very closely how this is going to evolve. I started the series in the Nation, Sunday Nation, called The Post-Truth. I went up to the 5th season, of the Post-Truth series. And I stopped there because I just wanted to find out how now the whole Post-Truth thing is going to start off. It started very mildly with my election was stolen. And the Kenyans laughed it off because the Supreme Court had made the judgment and the civil society had made a judgment and so on and so forth. But my election was stolen. There was some evidence that had all of a sudden cropped from the United States, from some guy there. And we laughed it off. That's what, 23rd of January. Then come 20th of March, the same year. And what do we see? Kenyans now rallying behind the kind of economic desperation that we are facing.
Very true.
And people don't want to elect Odinga because they know the election is not there. But they want to be behind Odinga because there doesn't seem to be something happening to ease their pain.
Exactly.
In regard to the many things that they are complaining about. And seemingly, you know, the hustlers, and I think I'm said to have moved to that side of the hustlers are actually, you know, playing Maria Antoinette. You know, somebody is praying that she was erected curse and therefore, you know, this and that. She's one of the 50 and so on. You know, really, you don't know the game. So what is happening? And from this cartoon, Raila has won lost the first rounds, the earlier rounds, if the cartoon was clear. But the moment he was paired up with the police, Ruto ran straight into what we call the Moi trap.
Yep.
The Moi trap, it was set very, very carefully. I mean, remember, in the international discourse, we talk about the traps. You know, there are quite a number of traps. In the Moi trap, Kenya is hurtling down to dictatorship. In the Moi trap, Kenya is hurtling down to poverty. In the Moi trap, we are going back to power cuts and you know, more taxes. People start talking about potholes, and then yellow maize, and then street resistance, and that's where Raila comes in. So the Moi trap is basically the benefit of Raila. What is the solution? The Kraji and others are talking about what I would call the Odinga trap. And the Odinga trap are the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are pressure in the streets, power sharing, and peace. This does not solve our problems, but it puts Raila in power. So the Odinga trap is basically what everybody is crying for. Let's go for it. I know it is not good. Power sharing is not good, but we need peace in the streets. We need, you know, we don't need this in our newspapers. And that is what actually, Raila set up the whole thing. That's why I'm saying he's a genius in the sense that he's able to push Ruto to move towards where he wants. The way you put baits. I said, I think last week, that Ruto is walking a high wire. While he's walking a high wire, he has to diffuse tensions and protest in the streets, and at the same time have nobody hurt. Nobody hurt, either through death or through injuries. Now, you look at the editorials of Nation, police went overboard in their bid to quell protests.
That is the standard.
That's the standard.
Yes.
You go to the Nation and everywhere, it is the same. Nation on Sunday was warning about the same. Meaning, now the debate is defined 100% by Raila and the thinkers. Yes. And this is quite different from the 23rd of January and the 20th of March. So what are we saying? I think the hustlers need to go back to the drawing board.
Absolutely.
The hustlers need to go back to the drawing board?
They need to go back to the drawing board. Or either they go back to the drawing board and come with another game plan, or sit down with Raila and tell him, Baba, we are sorry. Come in and let's have a handshake or whatever they're calling it. Look at the cut.
Why should they be sorry?
No, because they let him out for too long. Had they accommodated him enough, we would not be having the street riots.
But on what framework are we accommodating
No,
him?
this is the point. If you don't have a game plan, and he's going to be in the streets every twice a week.
Is it the owners of the government to have a game plan, or also they should
yes.
It should be a framing from the constitution?
No. There is no constitution. Constitution says we have a two government in one. The government in power and the government in waiting. The government in waiting has said it is not waiting. It will be in before the end of time. And it has gone to the street with the 3 Ps. Pressure, power sharing, and peace.
I don't know of any government in waiting. I'm hearing from you there's a government in waiting. Let him clarify.
But yeah, that is the whole idea of the model of our government. Is the government in power and the government in waiting.
Okay.
Yes, the government in power, we call it government. The government in waiting, we call it minority.
Okay.
In parliament.
That's the clarification we are waiting,
Yeah.
not the government we're waiting. Professor Nomidamba. First of all, maybe I should ask you, Professor, because we thought this will be now the chopping block of Raila Odinga's political career. Are we seeing an invention of Raila Odinga with this particular protest? Has he also regained his mojo?
Yes, because what he has done. Sorry.
Let Professor just speak it. We'll continue. Yes.
Dubal, the entire population of Kenya is watching very closely the move that the government is taking, the message that is coming out, and they're watching the price of power goes up, and they're watching 8% increase in automobile, luxury automobile, for senior people. And then what happened to the language of hustler? These young people are watching every day. I talk to a lot of them, and they say it is lost. And so going back to what Barack Obama said, sustainable, peaceful country for our children. That's where they're going. And in our defense strategy, we use what's called 3Ds. Defense, security, diplomacy, and development. All those have to come together, Dubai. And what is happening with the President Ruto administration is, for me, there are far too many people talking. So there is no coherent language that bring us together, bring the people together. You remember the issue of corruption is still here, okay? We have a huge economy, but the issue of corruption is still here. And then unifying Kenya. And so if I were, let me talk about the 5-step process, which I think we ought to do. Number one, succession of hostility. There is emotionality, there is a gap, huge gap between the youth, the government, and the people. So there has to be what I call mindset between Raila Odinga group and the Ruto group. To say we are going to stop talking, we are going to engage in discussion. We're going to stop shouting, what Americans call mudslinging. We are now going to engage. And then there is a leadership. Raila's got some very strong people, which you cannot underestimate. Martha Karua is committed. Kalonzo is in. And Wamalwa and all these people. And they are from all over. They're attractive team that is there. And then it seems to me that on the president's side, there are far too many people talking. There are members of parliament talking, there are DPs talking, everybody's talking. There's no coherent language, which bring the president need to be the spokesperson for the government. And all these other people need to focus on it. Third thing, there need to be a technical team which understand all the issues these people are concerned about. From all sides, the meeting again of the mind, which Raila's team have got, the government has. And then you moving to clear recommendation, because what they started with is not working. It's this hustler thing is dead. And so they need to re-evaluation.
You've already declared a death knell on the hustler.
No, it's dead. It's dead. And so there need to be re-evaluation and acceptance of the way forward. So they come together. And then whatever role opposition is going to play in the future and the government's going to play in the future, we need mature mind sober mind, because our country is bigger than all of us.
Indeed. And you can see also that editorial cartoon in the Star today, if my director Justina may just pick it up fully. And people have been comparing the protest here in the country and other countries as well. We can see Julius Malema there. Viva, everyone is propping up their fists. And we have also Nigeria. Is that Obi? That they've moved to court right now. They were demonstrating also on March the 10th as well. And many people have compared our demonstration here with South Africa demonstration, that they were a bit more organized. It was a bit peaceful. But unbeknownst also to many, we had army. The army was deployed everywhere in South Africa, unlike here in the country where we just had the police as well. Could we briefly also talk about this protest that people were saying, you know, there's an influence, there's actually an outside influence that is steamrolling this. How come we had all these protests happening on the March of 20th? Were there any meetings? Raila was in South Africa. So people have also a lot of speculations as well,
No.
if this is truly sponsored by the West.
There is an organic uprising against the political economy of our continent. And it's based on some very basic and foundational issues. The idea that in the 21st century, the basic premise of citizenship, voting rights, and economic rights have become befuddling. The reason they've become befuddling is because the state elites, the people who are leaders in this continent, have not done what the popular aspirations of the people of this continent aspire to. And what's that? Well, you know, one of my favorite authors is an Irishman called Hemingway. He said, you know, there's an optimist built the airplane.
Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, Ernest Hemingway. An optimist built the built the airplane, but it is the pessimist who built the parachute, because he didn't believe his plane was going to work. So they decided to have parachutes in a way, so just in case something happens. So what we are suffering from is structural issues. And what are those structural issues? Should we have a first across the post system in Africa, where you have very deep commitments to the worlds of tradition, of culture, of a worldview that speaks to their ancestors, that is, as it were. And should we accept that the political systems that we inherited from Europe, are they amenable to our own worldview? We could be fighting over something that we just didn't make. And one of the things I firmly believe, Deval, is in parliamentary democracy. So parliamentary democracy, Deval, is not a European invention. You know, as I said last time, Pythagoras was in Kemet studying mathematics for years before he went to Greece. So civilizations have evolved and informed themselves about systems. So to make it intelligible for our viewer, why we have a first across the post system? Mr. Ruto was elected in 2 provinces. The rest of the country was blue. Why did Mr. Odinga lose? When you start looking at it in that way, you understand why there's protests in this country. The government is saying we have a political system which is first across the system. Mr. Odinga stamped on it, agreed to it, and he lost. And he now wants to come through the back door. So you see, it's a 2 solitudes, huh? So, the question is a constitutional question. How do we share power in this country? That's the crux of the matter. If we allow ourselves in a society where ideology is not the driving force of politics, then we're setting ourselves up for failure, and this is what's happening. So I think that after 60 years of independence, we ought to start thinking about how our political structure is built, and how is it that we can all accommodate everybody in this country, even though there is the leading coalition, so that in a prime ministerial system, you would have inclusion and debate about the national issues of this country. If we had that in our system, you know, I think we would not have these riots and all these. Lastly, The great Machiavelli said, you get to know a leader by the people around him. Dabal, have you seen the people around the president? I'm just buttressing my learned senior's point. The people around the president, Dabal, are yes men. And I've always said the biggest problem this president has, he has all the guys, they're all younger than him or his age group, and they're all yes men. And Mr. Ruto firmly believes in his vision. He firmly believes that he has the righteousness of his cause. And it's very difficult to tell the president that you're wrong on this matter. And if there is something that is most important in the world, as Marcus Aurelius has taught us, is that you have to have people who can look you in the eye and say, this is wrong. The government has lost the moral ground in this country. It now has to reach out to the opposition and speak to it about the urgent issues in this country and how we're going to move forward. There's no question about that in my mind about it.
So the constitutional question is not really expressed for the first time here. I think we've been in this morass before. In 2018, we were here with the same issue. When you're talking about fast pass to the post as well, that is a question that has been raised. But looking also at other democracies, if we pick up South Africa, who are purely operating on the parliamentary system, we expect that they will not be on the streets as well, right? So if we may make comparisons, contrasting what is happening here in the country and South Africa as well, why would they be on the streets? Because everyone is saying, oh, you know, it is a constitutional question. We need to, you know, interrogate and audit our constitution. It's been 10 years down the line. We need now to gravitate towards parliamentary system. That will be the prime solution to the problem that we're having on power sharing. South Africa, good case. Kagwanja, you've studied there, you've lived there, you've worked there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's first of all understand the broader phenomenon
which is
that we are dealing with, you know, at the continental level. On the 20th of March, we had 4 major African countries going into the streets, where the opposition is now leading an offensive against governments in power. And these countries are not your ordinary countries. South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Tunisia are what you describe as regional hegemons. And hegemonic countries, I mean, the hegemonic theory is that for stability to be there must be a hegemon. There's globally, America becomes the hegemon that keeps law and order globally. Then within regions, like for example Africa, the continent is split into 4: the lower, the west, the east, and the upper. Tunisia is the largest economy in that part of the world, together with Egypt. Now, Nigeria is the largest economy on the continent, and in West Africa, it is the regional power. Kenya, after the crisis in Ethiopia, is the regional power in West. So you will not be surprised that the British scholar, Nick Chisman, is now, you know, popular for his concept of you know, hegemonic instability. In other words, the pillars that hold the temple are coming down. And therefore, we are hurtling down to what we are calling the African Spring, the equivalent of the Arab Spring. And because when the hegemons begin to collapse, then we are talking about an African Spring. And the question you asked at the beginning is this a deliberate effort by somebody out there? Again, back to the conspiracy theories. Yes, in order to ensure that Africa does not go to the docket of China, Russia, and Iran, which is, you saw that kind of a configuration of global power now, that there is now the leading powers are supposed to be those ones versus the West. Africa has to be on its knees, either economically or politically. In the 1970s and 1980s, well, actually starting from the late 1960s, was orchestrated, you know, a wave of coups that completely destabilized the continent. Our own Ali Mazrui studied those coups and divided the countries in Africa as coup-prones and coup-proofs. And it came out that the coup-prones are more. Even those who were coup-proofs had devastating coup attempts, like Kenya in 1982, August, we had a coup. In 1971, we had a coup attempt. and so on. So there was no country that was immune to coup. And what happened? The West intervened in order to stabilize the polity. Now, after these springs, we are going to see a lot of pressure by the West and others to stabilize the polity of Africa. That is at the level of the global. But comparing what is happening in Africa and in South Africa, and particularly Kenya, Nigeria case is unique because this is a case of an election, one of its kind, where, you know, the incumbents are said to have stolen elections. That's normal. They can resolve it in court or otherwise. But compare Kenya and South Africa. They have held elections. They have sitting presidents who are legitimately elected according to the established constitution. And all of a sudden, these countries are teetering on the precipice. Why? And how is it happening? In South Africa, as Hashi has rightly put it, the military is in the street. 3,000 plus soldiers, armed soldiers in the street. Now, people were arrested, almost 100 people were arrested before the protests.
Yes.
In other words, South Africa took a preemptive strike rather than a reactive strike. So over 100 people were arrested in that country. But the opposition needs to be more organized to the point that the destruction of property, the chaos in the streets was minimized. It was a good procession, like, you know, any church procession during the, you know, what is this?
Lent.
During Lent, when you were carrying the green twigs and singing Hallelujah in the streets. Nobody is threatening anybody. That's what Marema strikes were about. I mean, protests were about. People wearing the same cap and Marema reading from the front. That was special. When it comes to Kenya, Dinga never appeared anywhere except inside the car, protected by my professional colleague Makamo Tua, somewhere. The way it is, and the conversation were also tapped. You could hear what they are talking about. Obviously, there were people like Wajakoya who claims that they were doing that because they were fearing assassination. That was said. But I think it was because when people could not come for the streets for understandable reasons, they decided to go to the people. And they went to Mathare, and Kibera, they couldn't make it. And therefore, there was nothing in the streets. What was there were in Kisumu and Mathare, where people are. And therefore, canisters are said to have been thrown into people's houses. Why? Because these were not the streets. So the point one is making is that the Kenyan protests were chaotic, extremely chaotic, and did not conform to what you'd call legal protests. Because protests are, or rather demonstrations are protected by our constitution. Indeed. Let's be clear about that. Raila can go to the street 10 times a week. It is his legal right. And he can take his people to Uhuru Park every time. The constitution allows him. The question is whether that is going to interfere with other people's freedoms and other people's rights. And I think that is where Raila needs to train his people to the point that we started off with a nasty joke about the prices of stones, from the guided missiles to projectiles to now the ordinary stone, and the prices, I think it was 50 shillings, 30 shillings, and then 20, and then 10. Now, what point are we making? For Raila to enjoy his constitutional rights without interfering in other people's rights, he has to stop weaponizing a specific tribe. Because two things are emerging. This strike had almost 90% were from one region. And that's not healthy for our democracy. It is not. Because the problem we are suffering are across the country. Why is one community feeling more pain than others? Second, can we tame ourselves that we go into the street, do our demonstrations, and go home? We can do that every day, and nobody will be worried about it. 3, don't declare national holidays. Because the moment you do, I lost myself. I have a class. I'm teaching a class at the University of Nairobi. I normally have my consultation day as that day, Monday. My students did not show up, and I asked them, why are you not showing up? Because we were afraid. One of them told me, I come from Kabete, and the strikes were starting there. I think we need to learn the art of demonstrations. without hurting the economy.
Right.
Go to the streets, but don't hurt us.
Just a moment. So let me ask you, Professor Noamidamba, you were talking about learning the art of demonstration. But looking at this demonstration, how it started off, we had the police really, having the extra sort of a judicial of lobbing the tear gas, I should say, beating some of the protesters who, some of them are just walking in town, going about their business, heading to their office, but they could not really access some of these offices because the roads were barricaded, were cordoned off. Did the police also contribute to the violence that we saw in this demonstration? And if you're talking about learning the art of demonstration, can it begin with the police service itself? All right? So that now they know, because even the moniker we normally use, Fanya Fujo Uo, Uone, it just sort of really instills in our brains that any demonstration has to be. There has to be an element of violence.
Dubal, let me begin with the point that Professor Kagwanja mentioned, which I like to caution people about. This is not about tribe. This is about issues that is affecting Kenya. If you take the 4 countries together where demonstration is taking place, there are 4 top economies in the continent of Africa. I was looking, their gross national product, their per capita income, their top economy in the world. What is the common denominator across the board? Cost of living. When you look at South Africa, you look at Nigeria, you look at North, you look at Kenya. Cost of living, okay? Things are not right, Dubal. Kenya, out of 343 million people, those 4 countries together, Kenya has 53 million. Africa has 1.3 billion people. That's edging closer to half of the continent of Africa. This is going to influence the entire continent, this movement, as you say. The responsiveness of police to create peace can get lost very easily in the middle of this. It happened in New Orleans when the flood came and the police became gangsters. They basically split into gangsters and start shooting people, start shooting each other. Don't anybody sit easy and say this Odinga's thing. This catching fire. Listen to the students at the university. They eat on the street in Western Nairobi. Kids, they eat on the street instead of going to a restaurant and having proper meal because they cannot afford it. And so the hustler, the people in the street, cannot afford to send their children to school, to have meal at home. We need to address it, Dubal. We need to address these fundamental issues which is affecting the country. And don't start pointing at fingers. Don't start, because the former regime, Uhuru regime, is done. They're not in the picture. The things they did well, the things they didn't do well. They're not perfect. And we don't expect the current administration to be perfect. But there is a need to communicate with the people about the sacrifice we're supposed to take as a nation, as Kenya, in order to get, and a very clear message as to where we are going and a commitment to unite the people, not divide them. We have gone through election or bringing and changing the government so that it's not one group win for all. There is nothing wrong with going back, Dubal, and unveiling that process such that Kenya can expect clear representation.
All right, we are due for a station break right now. And when we circle back, of course, we will wind up on the current state of play in the country, where we have the politics and the tensions rising up, being ramped up because of its demonstrations. Now we have another day tucked in that will be twice in a week, Monday and Thursday, according to the latest pronouncement by Raila Odinga. We have the Deputy President saying that we lost 2 billion shillings on that particular day on Monday. What will it be also with another day being added in the week as well? And the frustrations, the school calendars are being affected by that, as we've seen many of you who are frustrated. But it is a critical time that we have a conversation as a country, because it seems we are always playing this broken record all the time. After every electioneering period, we come to the same impasse that we are in as a country, and we have no prime solution being actually settled on. We keep reviving the vicious cycle. How can we break this Gordian knot? Because we don't want to be having these conversations about, the past the post, constitutional questions, sharing of power, that we have 50% of Kenyans who feel aggrieved and they are not really happy with the elections as well. What do we do with that constituent as well? We take a short break. When we circle back, we shall be looking as well at what is happening on the Horn of Africa as well. We will follow the visit of Blinken in Ethiopia, where he has also made a pronouncement regarding the war crimes there. And also we shall be looking at what is happening as well in DRC Congo. We asked the question critically, if Tunisia was back also in the streets as well. This is where the Arab Spring emanated from. And we should be learning more with the Jasmine Revolution that began in Tunisia, where we had a young man, self-immolating himself because of the cost of living. Right, we take a short break, don't go away.